I had a busy time in the office through the week. Raymond dropped in once to tell me that he'd sent off the letter. I went to the pictures twice with the Emmanuel, who doesn't always understand what's happening on the screen and asks me to explain it. Yesterday was Saturday, and Mary came as we would arranged. She had a very pretty dress with red and white stripes and leather sandals, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. One could see the outline of her firm little breasts, and her suntanned face was like a velvety brown flower. We took off the bus and went to the beach I know, some miles out of Algiers. It's just a strip of sand between two rocky spars, with a line of rushes at the back, along the tight line. At 4 o'clock the sun wasn't too hot, but the weather was pleasantly tepid and small, languid replies were creeping up the sand. Mary taught me a new game. The idea was, while one swam, to suck in the spray of the waves and, when one's mouth was full of foam, to lie on one's back and spurt it out against the sky. It made a sort of fruity haze that melted into the air or fell back in a warm shower on one's cheek. But very soon my mouth was smarting with all the salt I would drown in. Then Mary came up and hugged me in the water and pressed her mouth to mine. Her tongue cooled my lips, and we let the waves roll us about for a minute or two before swimming back to the beach. When we had finished dressing, Mary looked hard at me. Her eyes were sparkling. I kissed her. After that, neither of us spoke for quite a while. I pressed her to my side as we crumbled up to the foreshore. Both of us were in a hurry to catch the bus, get back to my place, and tumble onto the bed. I left my window open, and it was pleasant to feel the cool night air flowing over our sunburned bodies. Mary said she was free next morning, so I proposed she should have lunch with me. She agreed, and I went down to buy some meat. On my way back, I heard a woman's voice in Raymond's room. A little later, old Salomon started grumbling at his dog, and presently there was a sound of boots and puffs on the wooden stairs. Then, "Filthy brute, get on, you cur!" And the two of them went out into the street. I told Mary about the old man's habits, and it made her laugh. She was wearing one of my pyjama suits, and had the sleeves rolled up. When she laughed, I wanted her again. A moment later, she asked me if I loved her. I said that sort of question had no meaning, really, but I suppose I didn't. She looked sad for a bit, but when we were getting our lunch ready, she brightened up and started laughing, and when she laughs, I always want to kiss her. It was just then that the row started in Raymond's room. First, we heard a woman saying something in a high-pitched voice, then Raymond babbling at her. "You let me down, you witch. I will run, you let me down." There came some thoughts, then a piercing scream. It made one's blood run cold. And in a moment, there was a crowd of people on the landing. Mary and I went out to see. The woman was still screaming, and Raymond still knocking her about. Mary said, "Wasn't it horrible?" I didn't answer anything. Then she asked me to go and fetch a policeman, but I told her I didn't like policemen. However, one turned up presently. The lodger on the second floor, a plumber, came up with him. When he banged on the door, the noise stopped inside the room. He knocked again, and after a moment the woman started crying, and Raymond opened the door. He had a cigarette dangling from his underlip and a rather slicky smile. "Your name?" Raymond gave his name. "Take that cigarette out of your mouth when you're talking to me," the policeman said gruffly. Raymond hesitated, glanced at me, and kept the cigarette in his mouth. The policeman promptly swung his arm and gave him a good hard smack on the left cheek. The cigarette shot from his lip and dropped a yard away. Raymond made a wry face, but said nothing for a moment. Then, in a humble tone, he asked if he mightn't pick up his cigarette. The officer said yes, and added, "But don't you forget next time that we don't stand for any nonsense, not from guys like you." Meanwhile, the girl went up sobbing and repeating, "He hit me, the coward, he's a pimp." "Excuse me, officer," Raymond put in, "but it is that in order calling a man a pimp in the presence of witnesses?" The policeman told him to shut his trap. Raymond then turned to the girl. "Don't you worry, my pet, we will meet again." "That's enough," the policeman said, and told the girl to go away. Raymond was to stay in his room till summoned to the police station. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself," the policeman added. "Getting so tight you can't stand steadily. Why, you are shaking all over." "I am not tight," Raymond explained. "Only when I see you standing there and looking at me, I can't help trembling. That is only natural." Then he closed his door, and we all went away. Mary and I finished getting our lunch ready, but she hadn't any appetite, and I ate nearly all. She left at 1, and then I had a nap. Toward 3, there was a knock at my door, and Raymond came in. He sat down on the edge of my bed, and for a minute or two said nothing. I asked him how had it gone off. He said it had all gone quite smoothly at first, as per program. Only then she slapped his face and he would see red and started thrashing her. As for what happened after that, he needn't tell me, as I was there. "Well," I said, "you taught her a lesson, all right. And that's what you wanted, isn't it?" He agreed and pointed out that whatever the police did, that wouldn't change the fact she would had her punishment. As for the police, he knew exactly how to handle them. But he would like to know if I would expected him to return the blow when the policeman hit him. I told him I hadn't expected anything whatsoever, and, anyhow, I had no use for the police. Raymond seemed pleased and asked if I would like to come out for a stroll with him. I got up from the bed and started brushing my hair. Then Raymond said that what he really wanted was for me to act as his witness. I told him I had no objection, only I didn't know what he expected me to say. "It is quite simple," he replied. You've only got to tell them that the girl had let me down." So I agreed to be his witness. We went out together, and Raymond stood me a brandy in a cafe. Then we had a game of billiards. It was a close game, and I lost by only a few points. After that, he proposed going to the brothel, but I refused. I didn't feel like it. As we were walking slowly back, he told me how pleased he was at having paid out his misreads so satisfactorily. He made himself extremely amiable to me, and I quite enjoyed our walk. When we were nearly home, I saw old Solomona on the doorstep. He seemed very excited. I noticed that his dog wasn't with him. He was turning like a teetotum, looking in all directions and sometimes peering into the darkness of the hall with his little bloodshot eyes. Then he would mutter something to himself and start gazing up and down to the street again. Raymond asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer at once. Then I heard him grunt, "The bastard, the filthy cur." When I asked him where his dog was, he scolded at me and snapped out, "Gone." A moment later, all of a sudden, he launched out into it. I would taken him to the parade ground as usual. There was a fair on, and you could hardly move for the crowd. I stopped at one of the booths to look at the handcuff king. When I turned to go, the dog was gone. I had been meaning to get a smaller collar, but I never thought the brute could slip it and get away like that. Raymond assured him the dog would find its way home, and told him stories of dogs that he traveled miles and miles to get back to their masters. But this seemed to make the old fellow even more worried than before.